I saw angels. I know it sounds crazy. I know many will doubt what I'm about to tell you, but I need to talk about the day my life changed forever. It was during the Our Lady of Light procession in St. Gabriel's Valley, when luminous figures appeared out of nowhere to protect our children from a devastating cyclone. I was there, I saw everything with my own eyes, and to this day I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about those flashes of light that defied all the laws of nature. My name is Robert, I'm 43 years old, and I've been the photographer for our small town for almost 2 decades. I know every cobblestone street, every colonial house, every face that makes up our community of just over 8,000 inhabitants. St. Gabriel's Valley has always been a place where nothing happens. You know, one of those sleepy towns where the most exciting event of the year is the century-old procession that our grandmother organized before us, and our mother before her, a tradition passed down from generation to generation like a sacred inheritance. That Sunday, October 15th, I was preparing my equipment to document another edition of the procession. I'd done it every year almost automatically. The same photos of the same families, the same pious smiles, the same candles flickering in the gentle afternoon breeze. It was my job, but I confess I had lost some of the charm. After so many years photographing the same faces, the same moments, I felt like a distant observer of the very faith that once moved me. My relationship with God was complicated at that time. I had lost my father 2 years earlier, not through death, but through a painful separation of my parents that split our family in half. My mother was devastated. I felt responsible for not being able to prevent it, and my faith began to crack like an old vase that receives a hard blow. I still went to church, still participated in community events, but it was more out of habit than conviction. God seemed to have become a distant, almost abstract idea. It was in this state of mind that I arrived at the central square that Sunday. The day had been strange since early morning. I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest, as if something important was about to happen, but I couldn't identify what. The sky was clearer than usual, almost crystalline, but there was a tension in the air that I couldn't explain. The birds were restless, flying in low circles, and my dog, Thunder, had been hiding under the bed all morning, trembling for no apparent reason. The procession began promptly at 3 in the afternoon. Our Lady of Light, carried by 8 men from the community, emerged from the main church, followed by approximately 500 people. In front, as always, came the children from catechism, about 25 youngsters between 5 and 12 years old, dressed in white and singing with their sweet and tuned voices. I knew them all by name: little Mary Claire, only 6 years old, always smiling with her milk teeth; John Peter, 8, who loved to make faces for my photos; and Anna Louise, 10, serious and concentrated like a miniature nun. Following the children came Father Anthony, a man in his 60s who had dedicated his entire life to our community. After him, the families organized themselves naturally, young couples with babies in their arms, middle-aged adults like myself, and finally the elderly, some leaning on canes, others pushed in wheelchairs by patient grandchildren. I walked alongside the procession, stopping from time to time to capture the moments I considered important. The light was perfect for photos, that golden light of late afternoon that every photographer loves. But as we advanced through the narrow streets, I began to notice subtle changes in the environment. The wind, which until then was just a cool breeze, began to gain strength. The leaves of the trees began to dance more intensely, and I noticed that people's candles were flickering more than usual. I looked at the sky and saw the first clouds forming on the horizon. No big deal, I thought. St. Gabriel's Valley is in a region where weather changes are common in the late afternoon, but something in me began to be alert. Maybe it was my experience of so many years photographing outdoors, but I had developed a kind of sixth sense for sudden weather changes. The procession continued for another 15 minutes, going down Flower Street, turning onto Commerce Street, passing in front of houses where residents greeted us from windows and balconies. The children continued singing, their voices mingling with the sound of footsteps on the uneven cobblestones. It was a hypnotic, almost meditative sound. I was beginning to feel more connected to that moment, as if I could finally see beyond the routine. That's when everything changed. It was hope, an 80-year-old woman who never missed a procession, who shouted first, "My God, look!" She pointed down the street, towards where we had come from. I turned my head and saw something that still sends chills down my spine just remembering it. A wall of wind and debris was moving towards us. Leaves, branches, scraps of paper, roof tiles, everything swirling in a furious dance that grew in height and width as it approached. It was a tornado, something I had never witnessed firsthand, something that, according to all the meteorologists in the region, was practically impossible in our geographical area. Panic was instantaneous. People started running in all directions, some seeking refuge in the nearest houses, others simply running aimlessly, driven by the primal instinct to flee. I heard screams of terror, children crying, the sound of objects being dragged by the wind. The whole world seemed to have gone mad in a matter of seconds. My first thought was to protect my photographic equipment, a stupid professional reflex in a life-or-death situation. But then my gaze fell upon the children from catechism, and my heart leaped differently. They were standing right in the middle of the street, as if unable to process what was happening. Father Anthony was trying to reach them, but the wind was so strong that he could barely stand. That's when I saw it. Between the children and the approaching tornado, figures began to emerge. At first, I thought they were just effects of light refracted by the dust and debris in the air. But the forms became clearer, more defined. They were tall, very tall, and possessed something I can only describe as wings. Huge, luminous wings that opened like a protective shield around the children. I blinked several times, wiped my eyes with my hands, thought I was hallucinating from despair and adrenaline, but the figures remained. They weren't opaque like normal people, but they weren't transparent like ghosts. They were made of a light that seemed to come from within, a golden, warm light that contrasted sharply with the menacing darkness of the tornado. At that moment, my years of skepticism crumbled like a house of cards. I was witnessing something that defied everything I believed about reality, about the laws of physics, about what was possible or impossible in this world. And the most impressive part is that I wasn't alone in seeing it. Hope had stopped running and was looking in the same direction as me, her eyes wide with absolute astonishment. Mr. Johnson, the owner of the local bakery, was kneeling in the middle of the street, his hands clasped together, praying aloud. Several other people had stopped running and were looking at the same point, at the same impossible figures that remained steadfast between the storm and the children. The tornado continued to advance, destroying everything in its path. I saw roof tiles flying like projectiles, trees being uprooted, cars being tossed around like toys. The sound was deafening, a constant roar mixed with the noise of destruction that grew with each passing second. But when the phenomenon reached the children, something happened that my mind still struggles to comprehend. The storm simply parted, as if there were an invisible barrier around the group of children. The tornado split, passing on both sides of them without touching them. The luminous figures remained motionless, with their wings outstretched, and I could swear I heard a sound different from the roar of the storm. It was like a song, a soft, reassuring melody that seemed to come from all directions at once. The children, who until then had been huddled together and scared, began to calm down. I saw little Mary Claire look up at one of the figures and smile as if she were seeing a dear friend. John Peter stopped crying and reached out his hand, as if he wanted to touch something I couldn't clearly see. Anna Louise clasped her hands in prayer, but not with fear, but with a serenity that made no sense, given the destruction happening around her. I tried to approach, driven by an impulse that mixed concern, curiosity, and a renewed faith I didn't know still existed within me. But when I tried to take the first steps towards the group, I felt a strange resistance in the air. It was like trying to walk through a wall of wind blowing in the opposite direction, but it wasn't exactly that. It was more like a gentle but firm force keeping me away. Father Anthony was experiencing the same thing a few feet away from me. I saw him try to advance several times, always being stopped by this invisible barrier. He was praying aloud, tears streaming down his face, his arms outstretched as if trying to reach his most vulnerable sheep. The storm lasted what seemed like hours, but in reality was only 15 minutes. 15 minutes that changed not only the geography of our town, but the spiritual lives of everyone present at that moment. When the tornado finally passed, leaving a trail of destruction that stretched for several blocks, the luminous figures began to gradually fade, as if they were made of golden mist that the gentle afternoon breeze was carrying away. The children remained exactly where they were, all unharmed, without a single scratch. Even more impressive, the ground around them was untouched, while everything around them was covered in debris, leaves, branches, and pieces of tile. The circle where they stood seemed to have been preserved by a supernatural force. When the dust finally settled and we could approach, we found the children calm, almost serene. Many were still looking upward, as if bidding farewell to someone only they could see. Little Mary Claire ran into her mother's arms and said something that still chills me to this day. "Mommy, the angels were singing to us. They said we didn't need to be afraid." John Peter, always the most articulate of the group, described the figures with a precision astonishing for an 8-year-old. "They were very big and bright, Uncle Robert. They had wings that looked like they were made of light, and their faces were as kind as Grandpa's when he tells me stories." Anna Louise, with her characteristic seriousness, added, "They were praying with us. I could feel their prayers in my heart." In the days that followed, St. Gabriel's Valley was completely transformed. News of what had happened spread first through the region, then the state, and soon reached national media. Journalists, scientists, meteorologists, theologians, the curious, and skeptics flocked to our small town in search of explanations or evidence. Some residents had managed to film part of the event with their cell phones. The images, though shaky and of questionable quality due to the adverse conditions, clearly showed luminous anomalies hovering over the group of children during the storm. Visual effects experts analyzed the footage and found no signs of manipulation. Meteorologists confirmed that a cyclone of that intensity had indeed hit the town, but couldn't explain how a group of people had remained completely untouched at the epicenter of the phenomenon. The official church maintained a cautious stance, as it always does in such cases. They spoke of investigation, of the need for more evidence, of not jumping to conclusions. But for us, who lived through it firsthand, there was no doubt. We had witnessed a miracle. I know those of you listening to this account may be wondering if all this really happened, if I'm not exaggerating or romanticizing a traumatic situation. If you've come this far and are interested in more stories like this, real stories of ordinary people who have experienced the extraordinary, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Believe me, there are many more testimonies like mine scattered around the world, people whose faith has been renewed in the most improbable moments. What happened to me that day went far beyond witnessing an inexplicable phenomenon. It was as if a part of me that had died with my parents' separation came back to life. The faith I thought I had lost forever was reborn stronger than ever. Not the blind, automatic faith I had before, but a conscious, questioning faith, based on a real and transformative experience. I contacted my father again. After 2 years of silence and resentment, I called him the week after the event. I told him what had happened, talked about how it had made me rethink many things about forgiveness, about purpose, about the greater forces that govern our lives. He cried on the other end of the line. He said he had also felt something different in those days, an inexplicable urge to reconcile with the family. Today, 3 months later, my father is back home. My parents are rebuilding their marriage with the help of a marriage counselor, and more importantly, with a humility and gratitude that didn't exist before. I know it may seem like a coincidence, but to me it's clear that it's all part of the same miracle that began that October Sunday. The children who were in the procession that day also changed. Not just them, but their entire families. There's a new serenity in their eyes, a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. They talk about the event naturally, as if having visible guardian angels were the most normal thing in the world. And maybe it is. Maybe the abnormality is our daily blindness to the miracles that happen around us all the time. My work as a photographer has also changed. Before, I documented events, almost mechanically, focused only on technique and composition. Now I seek to capture the souls of people, the moments of transcendence that exist, even in the most mundane situations. It's amazing how, when you're truly present, you can see the divine light reflected in a child's eyes, in an elderly person's expression of gratitude, in the smile of a couple in love. I've started attending church regularly, but not out of obligation or tradition. I go because I need that time of silence and reflection, that sacred space, where I can process everything I live and feel. Father Anthony has become a close friend. We talk at length about what we experience together, about how such events can transform not only individuals, but entire communities. St. Gabriel's Valley was never the same again, not just because of the material damage caused by the cyclone, which was repaired in a few weeks, but because of the spiritual transformation that took over the town. People greet each other differently on the street. There's more solidarity, more compassion, more time dedicated to what truly matters. This year's Our Lady of Light procession, which took place 2 weeks ago, was the most attended in the city's history. People came from neighboring states, entire families, who had heard about the miracle and wanted to participate in the tradition that now carries an even deeper meaning. Throughout the walk, I kept my eyes sharp, my camera ready, hoping that perhaps the angels would manifest themselves again. They didn't appear, at least not visibly, but I felt their presence in every smile of the children, in every candle that remained lit, despite the constant breeze, in every moment of reverence and gratitude that permeated the entire ceremony. I understood that angels don't always need to be visible to be present. They are in the small kindnesses, in the coincidences that transform lives, in the unexpected encounters that make us grow. A few weeks ago, I received a letter from a family in another state who had read about our miracle online. They had gone through a similar difficult situation to my family and shared how our story had inspired them not to give up on their faith, to continue believing that there is always hope, even in the darkest moments. That's when I understood the true purpose of everything we experienced that day. The miracle wasn't just the divine protection of the children during the storm. The miracle was how that event multiplied, touching other lives, inspiring other people, creating a wave of hope that spread far beyond the limits of our small town. Every person who hears this account and feels their faith renewed is an extension of the original miracle. Every family that reconciles, every heart that opens again to divine love, every soul that finds peace after the storm, is proof that angels continue to walk among us, not always visible, but always present. When I wake up in the morning now, my first thought is no longer about the problems I need to solve, or the worries that await me. My first thought is gratitude. Gratitude for having been chosen to witness something so extraordinary, for having my faith tested and renewed, for being part of a community that has learned to see beyond appearances. I know many will question my account, will look for scientific explanations, will try to reduce what we experienced to collective hallucinations or unusual meteorological phenomena. I respect all opinions, but I no longer need anyone's validation. I saw what I saw, I felt what I felt, and it changed my life in such a profound way that no theory or skepticism can diminish it. Angels exist. They walked among us that October Sunday, protected our children from nature's fury, and continue with us every day, invisible but active, silent but powerful. You just need to open your heart's eyes to see them acting in the small and large coincidences that shape our lives. If you are going through a difficult time, if your faith is shaken, if you feel that God has distanced himself from your life, I want to tell you one thing: angels are closer than you imagine. Sometimes they appear as luminous figures amidst literal storms, but most often they manifest themselves through ordinary people who arrive at the right time with the right word, through unexpected opportunities, through forces that help us overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. This is my testimony. This is my truth. And if it touches your heart, if it awakens in you a spark of hope or renews your trust in divine love, then the miracle of St. Gabriel's Valley continues to live, continuing to transform lives and spread light wherever it goes. The angels continue to walk among us, and for that I am profoundly grateful. In every sunrise, in every act of kindness, in every moment of peace we find amidst the chaos of life, they are there. You just need eyes to see and a heart to believe. This is the greatest gift the miracle gave me, the certainty that we are never alone, that there is always a higher power taking care of us, especially in moments when we most need protection and hope. May this be so for all of you as well.